My first impression, this sounds pretty good, and it's definitely a lot of value. This is the Fifine Tank 2 dynamic microphone, and thanks to Fifine for sending us this mic for review, so we're going to check it out. I'm going to tell you about the mic, what comes with it, and we'll take a listening test to it so you can hear how it sounds. I'll compare the sound of this microphone to a Shure SM58. And I'll also tell you a couple of things that give me pause, a couple of things I don't completely love about this mic. And after all of that, you should be in a pretty good position to see if the Tank 2 microphone might be the right mic for your content creation. When you purchase the Tank 2 microphone, it comes with a number of accessories, including a clip to mount it onto the stand, a foam pop filter, a small microphone stand, which is not bad, and you also get a lengthy USB to USB cable that is USB-C to USB-C with an adapter on one end that can make it into a USB-A cable, and it's all packaged up in a very pretty box that has foam cutouts for all the parts, so this would be a good storage box to retain to store the microphone when you're not using it. The Tank 2 offers flexible connections. It's both an XLR microphone and a USB microphone, so you can connect it to a standard audio interface with an XLR connector. And in XLR mode, the mute switch on the microphone is active and works properly. In USB mode, the mute switch continues to work, but there's also an indicator that illuminates in red when muted and green when active. The USB interface in this microphone is a high-fidelity interface offering 192K at 24-bit depth. So that means that you can connect this microphone via XLR or USB connection, and you should get full fidelity either way. On the back side of the microphone, in addition to those connectors, you'll find a jack for your headphones so you can monitor what's going on. With this mic, there is always a talkback signal. So if you put your headphones on, and the microphone is being powered by USB, of course, and you speak into the microphone, you're going to hear your own voice come into your headphones with no latency. The level in that mode is not adjustable, but I find the talkback level to be well engineered. It's plenty loud without blowing your head off, and so you can clearly hear yourself in your productions. On the back side of the microphone is also a volume control, which is a momentary switch that you can push one direction or another. It's kind of like having two push buttons for up and down volume. And that volume adjusts the playback volume of whatever the microphone is plugged into. So if the mic was plugged into your smartphone, it would control the playback volume of whatever's coming from that phone to your headset. So if that's another person on a Zoom call, or if you're listening to music, you can adjust that level with a control in the back of the mic. Or of course, if the mic is plugged into your computer, same situation. But that adjustment does not adjust the level of the talkback signal. And that's the way that I would prefer the mic to operate, so I like that. One of the things that I've noticed about this mic, which is consistent with the other Tank series microphones from Fifine, is that it is highly directional. So when I speak directly into the mic like I am right now, it picks me up just great. But if I move off to the back side, it really drops out rapidly. And this is a great feature for those of us who are not recording in pristine, quiet environments, because the microphone pretty effectively blocks out or reduces the amount of background noise happening in the environment, so it can focus on you. If you're planning on using this microphone on stage live with sound amplification system, that's probably a great feature for reducing the potential of getting feedback on stage, because the mic's going to be just hearing you and not picking up a bunch of background splash coming in. I think the sound character of this mic is pretty clean and clear and articulate, and for a dynamic mic, especially at this price point, with my limited amount of testing, I think it sounds pretty good. And so let's, on that note, switch over and take a listen to a Shure SM58. Now, I suggest the SM58 because that's a mic I commonly recommend if people are looking for affordable, good quality dynamic microphones. Of course, the SM58 does not have any USB functionality, so it doesn't have as many features as this mic has. But the SM58 is a legendary classic mic, and it's well regarded. So let's take a listen to the SM58 versus the Tank 2. So here we have a Shure SM58, and the SM58 I think has a little bit more mellow sound to it than the Tank 2, and which one you prefer the sound of is a matter of your preferences. Let me give you a quick sentence here. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Now let's once again listen to the Tank 2 as I move off to the side, and you can see what kind of rejection it offers. And I'll do the same exercise here over on the Shure SM58, where I'm talking right into the front axis of the microphone, and I move over to the side to see how much side rejection the SM58 offers. So that gives you a quick impression as to how these microphones compare in terms of sound. The Tank 2 is a handheld microphone, and obviously it works just as well in the hand as it does on the stand. And as long as I'm not moving my hands around any, I think it works just great. But one of the things that I've noticed about the Tank 2, which I think is a bit of a detraction, is that if I move my hand on the microphone, it tends to pick it up. It's a little bit handling noise sensitive. So if I just kind of rub my fingers around a little bit and I'm not holding the microphone completely still in my hand, you can hear those noises come through the mic. If I tap on the mic a little bit, I think you can hear that coming through the mic. And so if you're going to hand hold this microphone, it works just fine as long as you keep your hand still. But if you rub the body of the mic, I think that's going to come through, and it comes through on the Tank 2 a little more than on some other microphones. So if you're planning on using the microphone in a handheld fashion, that is something to be aware of. Let's do the same sort of test using a Shure SM58 here so you can see how these compare. So now I've got the Shure SM58, and of course handheld, it works just fine as well. And we've seen these mics used on stage frequently, so we know that works. Let me move my fingers around a little bit like I did with the other microphone and see if you can hear that handling noise. I'm sure you're hearing some of it, but is it as loud on the Shure SM58 as it was on the Tank 2? And let me tap the microphone a few times. So hopefully that gives you an impression as to the difference in handling noise between these two mics. Now, of course, if you're not planning on using the microphone in a handheld fashion, but you're going to use it on a desk stand, a boom arm, or a microphone stand, and that's your intended use, then this is not an issue whatsoever. Another consideration with microphones is how effectively they control plosive sounds. Now, this is not an indication that it's a good mic or a bad mic. It just means how sensitive is the microphone to those little puffs of air that can come out of your voice when you're expressing words that begin with P. And some of my expensive studio microphones are very prone to this, and they demand that you use a pop filter. Other microphones have integrated pop filters that tend to control this behavior pretty effectively. The Tank 2 microphone, as you can see, includes a foam pop filter, which I think is pretty effective. So let's say some P words into these microphones and see how they compare. Peter picked up some pickles from the produce department. So with the foam pop filter, I think it's pretty effective at controlling the plosive sounds, and those words come through clean and clear without distortion. Let's peel this off and try it again. So here's the microphone without the foam pop filter on it. And Peter picked up some pickles in the produce department. My impression of the Tank 2 is that it is a little bit sensitive to picking up plosives without the pop filter. And so they include a pop filter, which I think effectively takes care of that issue. But without a pop filter, this microphone doesn't have a lot of pop protection, and so that's something to be aware of. Now, if you don't speak directly into the microphone, you can control that quite well, or if you just use the foam pop filter, I think that controls it quite well. Let's see how the Shure SM58 fares with the same test. Here's the Shure SM58 with a pop filter attached to it. This does not come with the SM58, but they're readily available. Peter picked up some pickles in the produce section. I'll take off the foam filter. The SM58 includes an integrated pop filter in this microphone ball head. Peter picked up some pickles from the produce section. So you can see how both those microphones fare in that test. Now there's one more thing with the Tank 2 to be aware of, and this is a really minor issue, which is the Tank 2 has a pretty wide body on it. The diameter of the body is wider than most vocal microphones, and I like it. I think it feels really good in the hand. It's got a little bit of a beefy feel to it. It's very comfortable. And so I think that's a plus. But the minus to it is that it's a little bit larger than standard microphones. It's a little bit larger than the Shure SM58. And the problem with that is that the microphone clip on the stand needs to be a little bit bigger than a Shure SM58 clip. And so if you walk into a music store and ask for a standard microphone clip, they're probably going to reach for a Shure SM58 sized clip, which fits the Shure mic, but it also fits most other common live performance microphones from Sennheiser and Electro Voice and Shure. And so that's somewhat of an industry standard, is the diameter of the microphone body, and this one is a little bit larger. Now, of course, there are larger microphones out there like wireless mics that use larger clips than the standard Shure clip. But the issue is that if you need to replace the microphone clip on a Tank 2, you need to be able to find a clip that's just a little bit bigger than the standard Shure microphone clip. So those are some pretty minor downsides, if you even consider them to be downsides. The biggest one I see is the microphone handling noise, which may or may not be an issue for you depending upon your intended application. So that's a quick overview of the Fifine Tank 2 dynamic microphone. I think it's a pretty nice mic. It feels good in the hand, it looks good, and it sounds pretty good, and the price is definitely compelling. And with all the features of being both XLR and USB connectivity, it makes it really flexible. So I think this would be a great mic for content creators, YouTubers, podcasters, live streamers. If you're doing live performance with a band on stage, I think it would probably work pretty well because it's so directional and it sounds pretty clean and clear. However, in that application, I might still lean towards something like a Shure SM58 just because the 58 has such a legendary reputation for ruggedness and reliability. The Tank 2 hasn't been around long enough to build that kind of reputation just yet, but we'll see. It certainly feels like a quality part. So I hope that gives you some guidance and a quick introduction to the Fifine Tank 2. If you're interested in checking one of these out, I'll put a purchase link down below. And if you purchase through that link, I appreciate your support. If instead of a handheld mic, you'd prefer one that's a boom-mounted podcast-style mic, and you want a mic that sounds good with great rejection off the side and rear, consider the Tank 1 XLR microphone. It's one of my favorites. If you want one that is both XLR and USB with a little bit more of a bright sound like this mic has, the Tank 3 is a good choice. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit as we took a look at this Tank 2 microphone. If you enjoyed it, please take a quick second and throw me a thumbs up to let YouTube know you enjoyed this one. And hopefully I'll catch you again soon on another upcoming video.